The ink on the final page of the loan agreement had barely dried when Nathan Carter's phone buzzed across the polished conference table. He glanced at the screen, expecting another reminder from the bank manager. Instead, it was a call from his longtime neighbor, Linda Brooks. "Nathan," she said before he could speak, her voice trembling with urgency. "Why are people emptying your hardware store?" His hand froze around the pen. "What are you talking about?" "There are two large moving trucks outside. Men in uniforms are carrying out computers, filing cabinets, and dozens of boxes. I thought you hired them, but something doesn't feel right." Nathan shot to his feet so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. "I never hired anyone." The loan officer frowned at the interruption, but Nathan barely noticed. For 40 minutes, they had been reviewing paperwork for the biggest investment of his life. After 35 years of running Carter Home Supply, he was finally buying the abandoned lumberyard next door to expand the family business. It had always been his late grandfather's dream. Now that dream suddenly felt as though it were slipping away. "I have to go," Nathan said, leaving the papers scattered across the desk. As he hurried toward the exit, a burst of laughter echoed from the office beside the conference room. His footsteps stopped. He recognized that laugh instantly. It belonged to his younger sister, Claire Morgan. She was supposed to be visiting her teenage daughter in another city. Why was she inside the bank? And why did she sound so pleased? The questions stayed with him during the frantic drive across town. Traffic lights seemed endless. Every passing second tightened the knot in his stomach. During the past few months, Claire had shown an unusual interest in the business. She constantly asked about profits, insurance policies, expansion plans, security systems, and property records. Nathan had assumed she simply wanted to help after recovering from her difficult divorce. Now every conversation replayed in his head with a different meaning. When he reached Carter Home Supply, the moving trucks were already gone. Fresh tire tracks cut through the gravel parking lot. Linda stood waiting outside with her phone in her hands. "I took pictures," she said. Nathan scrolled through them silently. Professional movers loaded heavy cartons labeled accounting records. His office computer had disappeared. Metal filing cabinets were gone. Even the locked document safe had been removed. His stomach sank. Those files contained decades of financial records, supplier contracts, tax documents, ownership certificates, insurance policies, and customer information. Nothing inside that office could be replaced. The police arrived within half an hour. They inspected every entrance. No broken locks, no forced windows, no damaged alarms. Everything appeared perfectly normal, until one officer checked the security system logs. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "your alarm was disabled yesterday afternoon using the master access code. It was activated again this morning by the same code. According to the system, both entries were fully authorized." Nathan felt the blood drain from his face. Only one other person knew that code: Claire. Last year, while he was recovering from surgery, she had volunteered to watch the business for a week. He had trusted her completely. After all, she was family. The officers suggested changing every password immediately before leaving. They believed the situation was probably a misunderstanding between relatives. Nathan knew better. Before taking over the family business, he had spent nearly 3 decades investigating corporate fraud for one of the nation's largest insurance companies. Experience had taught him one lesson above all others: fraud always left evidence. The trick was noticing details everyone else ignored. He walked slowly through the office. Nothing obvious stood out, yet everything felt wrong. His desk chair pointed at a different angle. A coffee mug had been moved several inches. Dust patterns on the filing cabinet showed fresh fingerprints. Someone had searched the room carefully. Nathan unlocked the remaining cabinet. Half the legal documents had vanished. The original ownership certificate, the commercial property deed, business incorporation papers, insurance contracts. Every important record was gone. In their place rested a single folder. Inside was a freshly prepared partnership agreement. It declared Claire Morgan the majority owner of Carter Home Supply. Nathan stared silently at the signature on the final page. It carried his name. It looked authentic. It was notarized, but he had never signed it. Someone had forged every stroke of his handwriting with remarkable precision. The realization hit him harder than any financial loss ever could. This wasn't random theft. Someone had spent months planning to steal not only his business, but his family's entire legacy. Nathan barely slept that night. Instead of lying awake worrying, he did what he had spent 30 years teaching himself to do. Follow the evidence before following emotion. At exactly 8 p.m., he sat alone in his office with a notebook, his laptop, and every remaining business record spread across the desk. If Claire had stolen the documents, she hadn't done it simply to create confusion. There had to be a financial motive. He logged into the company's online banking portal. Within minutes, his heartbeat quickened. Several large payments had been transferred over the previous 3 months to suppliers he had never heard of. Frontier Industrial Supply, Midwest Equipment Logistics, Prairie Commercial Services. Each payment ranged between $8,000 and $15,000. Together, they totaled more than $60,000. The transfers all carried his electronic authorization. Nathan knew immediately they were fraudulent. He had never approved a single one. Someone had duplicated his digital credentials. He contacted the bank's fraud department. After verifying his identity, the representative reviewed the account history. The electronic authorization was created using your social security number and driver's license, she explained. However, the registration email belongs to someone named Claire Morgan. Nathan closed his eyes. The confirmation hurt more than he expected. He ended the call before anger clouded his judgment. Next, he accessed the company's commercial insurance account. Another surprise waited. 3 inventory theft claims had been submitted during the previous 8 weeks. Each claim requested just under $10,000. That amount avoided automatic investigation. The insurance company had already approved every payment, but the reimbursement deposits had not gone into Carter Home Supply's business account. Instead, they had been redirected to a different bank. Nathan wrote every detail into his notebook. Whoever designed this scheme understood banking regulations. They also knew exactly how insurance investigations worked. Most people would never notice the pattern. Nathan had built an entire career finding patterns. By midnight, his kitchen table looked like a detective's evidence board. Dates, transfers, insurance claims, phone records, security logs. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. This wasn't an impulsive crime. Someone had carefully planned it for months. The following morning, Nathan made a phone call he never imagined making. "Daniel Harper speaking." Nathan smiled despite himself. Daniel had retired from the Financial Crimes Task Force 2 years earlier, after helping prosecute several multi-million-dollar fraud rings. The 2 men had worked together on numerous investigations. "I need your help," Nathan said quietly. An hour later, they met inside Daniel's small investigative office. Nathan explained everything from the forged ownership agreement to the missing files. Daniel listened without interrupting. When Nathan finally finished, silence filled the room. "How certain are you that your sister is involved?" Daniel asked. Nathan leaned back. "If this were one of my old investigations, I'd say the evidence points to an insider with complete access, detailed knowledge of my schedule, and control of sensitive information." Daniel nodded slowly. "So you're certain?" "I wish I weren't," Daniel folded his hands. Family financial fraud has become one of the fastest-growing crimes in America. Most victims never report it because they hope the problem will disappear. It won't. No, Daniel agreed. It won't. He opened a legal pad. Here's what we're going to do. First, they would identify the notary who certified the forged ownership agreement. Second, they would trace every fake supplier payment. Third, they would subpoena security footage from the bank showing who created the electronic authorization. Fourth, they would determine where every stolen dollar eventually landed. Nathan listened carefully. It was exactly how he would have approached the case years earlier. How long? About 2 weeks. Nathan frowned. I don't have 2 weeks. You don't have a choice, Daniel replied. If Claire realizes you're suspicious, she'll destroy documents, move money, and create excuses before we have enough evidence. Nathan understood. Investigations required patience, even when emotions demanded immediate action. There is one condition, Daniel continued. You must behave exactly as you always have. No accusations, no arguments, no warnings. If she contacts you, act normal. Nathan looked through the office window. For years, he had protected Claire after their parents died. He had paid for part of her college education, helped with her mortgage after the divorce, loaned her money countless times without expecting repayment. Every memory now feels poisonous. I can do it, Nathan finally said. Daniel smiled slightly. I knew you could. For the next 2 weeks, Nathan played the role of an unsuspecting older brother. Claire called to ask about his health. She stopped by the store carrying coffee and pastries. She casually asked whether the expansion loan had been approved. She even offered to organize the remaining office files. Nathan smiled, thanked her. Everything was perfectly normal. Inside, however, every conversation felt like another knife twisting deeper. Meanwhile, Daniel's investigation moved quietly behind the scenes. Piece by piece, the truth began revealing itself. And when the first official reports arrived, Nathan realized the conspiracy was even larger than he had feared. 13 days after Daniel Harper opened the investigation, his office conference table disappeared beneath stacks of evidence. Every document is pointed in the same direction. Claire hadn't acted alone. She and her boyfriend, Marcus Reed, had spent months constructing a financial trap that was almost impossible to detect. Daniel slid the first report across the table. The notary confessed. Nathan picked it up. According to the sworn statement, Claire had visited the office alone carrying forged ownership papers. She presented fake identification, signed Nathan's name herself, and convinced the notary that everything was legitimate in exchange for a generous cash payment. The fraudulent partnership agreement was now officially proven. But that was only the beginning. Daniel opened another folder. The supplier companies don't exist. Nathan examined the paperwork. Frontier Industrial Supply was nothing more than a rented mailbox. Midwest Equipment Logistics was registered under Marcus's cousin. Prairie Commercial Services had no employees, no warehouse, and no operating license. They existed solely to receive stolen money. Every transfer eventually flowed into one private account. Marcus controlled it. Nathan remained silent. Years of investigative work had trained him to separate emotions from evidence. Still, seeing his own sister connected to every fraudulent transaction felt unbearable. Daniel pushed forward another report. This is where the money went. Nathan read each line carefully. $24,000 had paid off Marcus's gambling debts. Nearly $18,000 had been used as the down payment on a luxury SUV registered in Claire's name. Thousands more disappeared into online casinos, expensive vacations, designer clothing, and credit card balances. Not a single dollar had been invested in the business they claimed they wanted to protect. Nathan slowly closed the folder. They never intended to save the company. Daniel shook his head. They intended to empty it. The next report proved even more devastating. Through court-authorized digital evidence, investigators recovered dozens of deleted text messages. Nathan forced himself to read them. Claire. Nathan has another hospital appointment tomorrow. Perfect time to finish the paperwork. Marcus. Good. Once we control the business, we'll sell the property before he realizes what's happening. Another conversation appeared several weeks later. Claire. He's starting to ask questions about the insurance money. Marcus. Then speed things up. Claire. What if he refuses? Marcus. We'll convince everyone he's mentally declining. He's getting older. People will believe it. Nathan lowered the pages. For several seconds he couldn't speak. They hadn't simply planned to steal his business. They intended to destroy his reputation as well. If they convinced a court he was mentally incompetent, they could legally control every remaining asset. The betrayal reached far beyond money. It attacked his dignity. Daniel quietly placed one final folder on the table. This one is worse. Nathan opened it. Investigators had uncovered financial records connected to Marcus's previous businesses. The pattern repeated itself again and again. Small family companies, older owners, forged paperwork, fraudulent loans, missing money. Marcus had committed nearly identical crimes in 3 different states before meeting Claire. She hadn't joined an honest man who made one desperate mistake. She had willingly partnered with a professional fraudster. Daniel folded his arms. We now have enough evidence for conspiracy, bank fraud, identity theft, insurance fraud, forgery, wire fraud, and financial exploitation. Nathan nodded slowly. So what's next? Daniel smiled faintly. We give them one final opportunity. Nathan looked puzzled. Opportunity? Greed makes criminals careless. Daniel explained the plan. Nathan would invite Claire and Marcus to dinner inside the hardware store. He would pretend he wanted to make Claire an equal business partner because managing everything alone had become too difficult. If the investigation was correct, Claire wouldn't hesitate. She would push for complete ownership herself. Every word would be recorded. Federal investigators would remain nearby, waiting. Nathan considered the proposal carefully. It was risky. It also matched the strategy he had used dozens of times during his own investigative career. People rarely confess under pressure. They confessed when they believed they had already won. That evening, Nathan called Claire. I've been thinking, he said warmly. I know you've wanted to help more with the business. I have, she replied immediately. Would you and Marcus join me for dinner Sunday evening at the store? I'd like us to discuss the future. Claire sounded genuinely excited. Of course. We'd love to. After ending the call, Nathan sat alone inside the quiet office. His eyes drifted toward an old photograph hanging on the wall. He and Claire stood beside their father outside the original hardware store nearly 40 years earlier. Both children were smiling. Their father's arm rested proudly across their shoulders. Nathan wondered when that little girl had disappeared, or perhaps she had never truly disappeared. Perhaps greed had simply uncovered someone he had never wanted to see. Sunday evening would answer every remaining question. Sunday arrived with bright sunshine, but Nathan felt no warmth. He unlocked Carter Home Supply early that afternoon and prepared the small office exactly as Daniel had instructed. A simple dinner sat on the conference table. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, and homemade apple pie prepared from his late wife's favorite recipe. Everything looked peaceful. Hidden cameras and recording devices quietly documented every corner of the room. Outside, unmarked vehicles waited several blocks away. Daniel and the federal investigators would not move unless Nathan gave the signal. At precisely 6 o'clock, Claire and Marcus arrived. Claire wore an elegant navy blue dress and expensive jewelry Nathan had never seen before. Marcus greeted him with a confident smile and a handshake that lingered just a little too long. "Nathan," Marcus said cheerfully, "this looks wonderful." Claire hugged her brother. "It's been too long since we had dinner together." Nathan forced a smile. "It has." The meal began pleasantly. They discussed weather, local news, business trends, and neighborhood events. Marcus complimented the store's recent sales. Claire spoke emotionally about preserving the family's legacy. Nathan listened quietly. Years earlier, he would have believed every word. Now each sentence sounded carefully rehearsed. After dinner, Nathan poured coffee while Claire admired several framed photographs hanging on the office wall. "Our grandfather would be proud," she said softly. Nathan studied her face. He wondered whether she believed her own lies. Finally, Marcus leaned forward. "So, you mentioned wanting to discuss the future." Nathan nodded. "I've been thinking about retirement." Claire's eyes brightened immediately. "You have?" "I'm getting older," Nathan continued. "Managing the business alone isn't as easy as it once was." Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Claire. Nathan noticed it instantly. "I've wondered whether it's time for someone else to take a larger role." Claire reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "We've been worried about you. The stress. Your health. You shouldn't have to carry everything yourself." Marcus added, "You deserve to enjoy life while you still can." Nathan remained silent. Claire continued, "If you transferred majority ownership to us, we could manage daily operations. You could relax, travel, maybe move somewhere quieter." Marcus smiled confidently. "And eventually, if the market stays strong, we could even sell the property." Nathan looked directly at him. "Sell it?" Marcus nodded without hesitation. "It's valuable real estate. The business has served its purpose. We'd all walk away with a fortune." Nathan slowly placed his coffee cup onto the table. "So that's your recommendation?" Claire squeezed his hand. "It's the smartest decision." Nathan took a deep breath before opening the leather briefcase resting beside his chair. He removed a thick folder. The color disappeared from Claire's face almost instantly. Marcus stopped smiling. Nathan carefully laid the folder between them. "I've spent the past 2 weeks reviewing our business records." Nobody spoke. Inside the folder rested copies of forged ownership documents, bank statements, insurance claims, financial transfers, property records, photographs, digital forensic reports. Every page carried official certification. Nathan opened the first document. "This is the partnership agreement carrying my forged signature." He turned another page. "These are fraudulent payments made to shell companies controlled by Marcus." Another page. "These insurance claims redirected company money into your private accounts." Another. "These text messages describe your plan to convince everyone I was mentally incompetent." Claire's breathing became uneven. Marcus stared silently at the table. Nathan's calm voice never changed. "I spent 30 years investigating financial fraud." "You honestly believed I wouldn't recognize it?" Claire burst into tears. "Nathan, please." "We never wanted this," Marcus interrupted sharply. "Don't say anything." Nathan ignored him. "I trusted you because you were my sister." Claire covered her face. "We were desperate. Marcus lost everything. We couldn't pay our debts. We only needed a little time." Nathan slowly shook his head. "No, you didn't borrow. You stole. You forged my name. You planned to destroy my reputation." You tried to erase 3 generations of family history. Marcus suddenly stood. We're leaving. Nathan looked toward the office window. I wouldn't. Marcus froze. Outside, several black vehicles quietly pulled into the parking lot. Doors opened simultaneously. Federal investigators stepped out wearing identification jackets. Daniel Harper entered first. Behind him came uniformed officers carrying arrest warrants. Claire stared through the glass in complete disbelief. Marcus's shoulders collapsed. Daniel approached the table calmly. Claire Morgan, Marcus Reed. You are both under arrest for conspiracy, identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, insurance fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. Neither resisted. As officers secured handcuffs around their wrists, Claire looked at Nathan with tears streaming down her face. I never thought it would end like this, Nathan answered quietly. Neither did I. The officers escorted them outside. The office fell silent once more, but Nathan knew the hardest chapter of the story was still waiting ahead. The flashing lights faded into the distance as the investigators drove Claire and Marcus away. Nathan remained standing inside the office, staring through the front window long after the parking lot became empty again. Daniel walked back inside and quietly placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. Nathan nodded, though the words offered little comfort. I know. It just doesn't feel like a victory. Daniel understood. Financial crimes always leave 2 kinds of damage. The money could sometimes be recovered. Broken trust rarely could. Over the following months, prosecutors uncovered the full scope of Claire and Marcus's operation. The hardware store had never been their only target. Investigators linked Marcus to multiple fraudulent schemes involving elderly business owners across neighboring states. Claire had helped him gain access by using family relationships and personal trust. They discovered forged documents, fake companies, hidden bank accounts, and insurance scams stretching back several years. Nathan realized his business had almost become another forgotten victim. The criminal trial lasted less than a week. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records traced every stolen dollar. Digital forensic experts recovered deleted emails and text messages. Security logs confirmed unauthorized access. The notary admitted participating in the forgery. Former business associates testified about Marcus's previous schemes. There was nowhere left for either defendant to hide. Marcus accepted a plea agreement in exchange for revealing details of other financial crimes. Claire pleaded guilty soon afterward. During sentencing, she finally looked directly at her brother. I'm sorry, she whispered. Nathan believed she regretted the consequences. Whether she regretted the betrayal itself, he would never know. The judge sentenced Marcus to 6 years in federal prison. Claire received 4 years for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Both were ordered to repay restitution, although everyone in the courtroom understood that most of the money had already disappeared. Authorities seized the luxury SUV. Several investment accounts were frozen. Personal property was auctioned. Nathan eventually recovered a portion of the stolen funds, enough to stabilize Carter Home Supply and protect its future. The business survived. The family did not. Claire's teenage daughter moved in with her father and gradually rebuilt a quiet life away from the scandal. Nathan saw her occasionally around town. She always greeted him politely. He never spoke badly about Claire in front of her. Children deserved better than carrying the weight of their parents' mistakes. As the months passed, Nathan focused on rebuilding more than his finances. He modernized the hardware store. New inventory arrived. The lumber yard expansion finally became reality. Young employees brought fresh energy into the company while experienced staff preserved the traditions his grandfather had established decades earlier. Customers returned in greater numbers than ever. Many had heard pieces of the story. Few knew the entire truth. Nathan preferred it that way. One autumn afternoon, the local Chamber of Commerce invited him to speak about protecting small businesses from financial fraud. At first he hesitated. Reliving the experience seemed exhausting. Then he remembered how close he had come to losing everything. If sharing his story prevented even one family from suffering the same fate, it would be worthwhile. His presentation attracted business owners from across the state. Instead of speaking only about bank security and accounting systems, Nathan emphasized something many people overlooked. The greatest threat isn't always a stranger, he told the audience. Sometimes it comes from someone you love. The room fell silent. Trust should never replace verification. Even family members should follow proper financial procedures. Transparency protects honest people. Accountability protects families. His words spread farther than he expected. Soon he was invited to speak at regional business conferences, retirement organizations, and community banks. Several owners later thanked him for encouraging them to strengthen internal controls before problems appeared. One elderly couple even discovered forged checks written by a relative after attending his seminar. For Nathan, that alone made every painful memory worthwhile. Years later, he still unlocked the front doors of Carter Home Supply every morning. He still greeted longtime customers by name. He still paused beneath the framed photograph of his grandfather hanging near the entrance. The building represented far more than lumber, nails, and tools. It represented honesty earned through generations of hard work. Sometimes Nathan thought about Claire. He hoped prison gave her the opportunity to confront the choices she had made. Forgiveness, he realized, did not require forgetting. Some scars remained forever. They simply reminded people to protect what mattered most. Looking across the busy store one afternoon, Nathan smiled quietly. His family's legacy had survived because truth proved stronger than deception. And he learned one lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. Money can rebuild a business. Justice can punish betrayal. But trust, once broken, must be earned all over again.